Finally, after more than a decade of public struggle, media scrutiny, and legal control, Amanda Bynes stands at the edge of something that once seemed impossible: freedom. On June 19th, the former child star will legally exit the conservatorship that has governed her life for years. A system that once claimed to protect her, but ultimately came to define her. For fans who grew up watching her radiant comedic timing on The Amanda Show or What I Like About You, it's a deeply emotional moment, one that fuses nostalgia, heartbreak, and hope into a single cultural event. Amanda's journey from beloved Nickelodeon icon to the subject of tabloid spectacle has been a long and often painful one. Her descent into public crisis began in the early 2010s, marked by erratic tweets, bizarre behavior, and concerning incidents that drew widespread media attention. In 2013, following a psychiatric hold and various legal troubles, Amanda was placed under a conservatorship, her personal, financial, and medical decisions handed over to others. While this legal mechanism was framed as necessary for her well-being, it also stripped her of autonomy at a time when she was most vulnerable. In the years that followed, Amanda oscillated between moments of clarity and episodes of instability, each broadcast and dissected with brutal detail. But beneath the sensational headlines was a woman quietly, painfully, fighting to rebuild. She enrolled in fashion school. She distanced herself from the spotlight. And most crucially, she began pushing for her independence, not through interviews or red carpets, but through documented personal progress. Now, as the court prepares to grant her legal adulthood once again, the narrative surrounding Amanda Bynes is beginning to shift. No longer just a fallen star or a cautionary tale, she is being recast as something far more powerful, a survivor reclaiming her narrative. Her journey mirrors that of others who have emerged from conservatorships, most famously Britney Spears, but with a quieter kind of courage, away from the stage lights and hashtag movements. Amanda's final step toward independence may not involve a press tour or dramatic statement. It may be as simple and profound as signing her own lease, making her own doctor's appointment, or choosing how she spends her day. And in a culture obsessed with spectacle, that quiet return to personal agency might just be the most radical act of all. But behind the headline of Amanda Bynes regaining her freedom lies a tangled web of trauma, mistrust, and a legal system that has long walked the thin line between care and control. The years she spent under conservatorship were not simply defined by legal paperwork or medical evaluations. They were marked by a constant erosion of self. Every decision, from where she lived to how she accessed her finances or received treatment, required approval. For most people, adulthood means owning your mistakes and learning from them. For Amanda, those mistakes were used as justification to remove her ownership altogether. And while the intention of conservatorships is ostensibly protection, they are not immune to abuse, misjudgment, or stagnation. Amanda's mental health struggles, rooted in diagnoses of bipolar disorder and substance use, were complex and real. But the media's portrayal of those issues often ignored the nuance, choosing instead to mock her breakdowns, dissect her court appearances, and turn her tweets into punchlines. Every time Amanda tried to express herself, whether through art, education, or even frustration, it was filtered through the public's lens of the fallen child star. That narrative became a prison as real as the legal one she was living under. Her past was weaponized, her future discounted. While others her age built careers and families, Amanda fought simply for the right to be seen as capable. And unlike the court of law, the court of public opinion offers no appeal process, even when she took real steps forward. Completing coursework at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, staying out of legal trouble, reuniting with family, she was still treated as fragile, untrustworthy, or worse, irrelevant. The most painful conflicts weren't just with judges or conservators, they were internal. Amanda has spoken in rare interviews about feeling disconnected from her own voice, unsure whether her desires were her own, or conditioned responses to years of being told she couldn't be trusted. That psychological toll, the quiet devastation of second-guessing every thought, is the invisible wound many never see. And then there's the complicated role of her parents, especially her mother, who served as conservator. Balancing maternal love with legal authority creates emotional scars on both sides. And while Amanda has never launched public attacks against her family, the layers of hurt, gratitude, confusion, and resentment are undeniable. As she prepares to re-enter the world on her own terms, Amanda faces not just freedom, but the daunting task of rebuilding a sense of self from the fragments left behind by years of dependency. The battle wasn't just about regaining rights, it was about reclaiming identity in a world that thought it already knew who she was. Then, just as the final court document was signed and the news broke that Amanda Bynes would be legally free within 24 hours, a quiet but profound moment unfolded across digital platforms. Fans who had once shared memes of her lowest points were now flooding timelines with messages of support, redemption, and reflection. Hashtags like #Welcome Back Amanda and Freedom for Bynes began trending, not driven by scandal, but by an outpouring of empathy rarely granted in celebrity culture. For Amanda, the moment was surreal. There was no red carpet, no confetti, no interview-ready smile, just a long walk outside the courthouse, her face mostly hidden behind sunglasses and a hoodie. Yet, in that anonymity, there was power. She wasn't a spectacle anymore. She was a woman reclaiming her personhood on her own terms. Inside the court, her legal team submitted final evaluations confirming she could manage her affairs. Doctors signed off. Her mother, reportedly emotional but supportive, agreed the time had come. It was the first unanimous moment Amanda had received in years, a rare consensus that she deserved autonomy. But what came next was far more difficult than any signature, living without a safety net she'd simultaneously resented and relied on for nearly a decade. For someone whose every breakdown had once gone viral, the challenge wasn't just reintegrating, it was surviving without collapse. Amanda didn't celebrate with an Instagram post or press release. She didn't need to. Her silence was a protest against the culture that once dissected her every word. Still, those closest to her described the day as emotionally overwhelming. Friends who had stuck with her through the years shared that Amanda spent the evening quietly, journaling, listening to music, and reaching out to a small circle of trusted people, not to announce her victory, but to ask, what now? Meanwhile, the entertainment industry, always hungry for a comeback story, began speculating whether she'd return to acting. Agents whispered, podcasts hinted, but Amanda, true to her evolution, seemed uninterested in re-entering the machine that once nearly broke her. Instead, she was spotted weeks later visiting local art collectives, sketchbook in hand, asking about open studio sessions. Her healing wasn't performative. It was deliberate, personal, sacred. The public watched from a distance, perhaps for the first time respecting a boundary they had long violated. And slowly, her name began shifting in tone, from punchline to person. In that sense, her freedom wasn't just legal, it was emotional. It was cultural. It was the kind of freedom that doesn't ask permission and doesn't need to prove anything. Amanda Bynes had survived the collapse of fame, the weight of mental illness, and the grip of a system that decided she couldn't steer her own life. And now, with each quiet, unspectacular step, she was showing the world that recovery isn't a moment, it's a movement. One that begins not with a spotlight, but with peace. Ultimately, Amanda Bynes' emancipation marked not just the end of a conservatorship, but the rebirth of a life interrupted. In the days that followed her release, the world saw less of Amanda. Not because she was hiding, but because she was finally free from the obligation to be visible. There were no paparazzi-choreographed coffee runs, no glossy interviews, no revival tours. Instead, Amanda began to quietly reclaim the basic privileges many take for granted. Choosing when to wake up, what to eat, how to spend a rainy afternoon. Each seemingly mundane decision became a small act of resistance against years of enforced dependence. While the media, now treading more carefully in the post-Britney era, offered respectful headlines, the true reflection of Amanda's transformation came from fans and advocates who saw her not as a comeback candidate, but as a survivor of a flawed system. Think pieces emerged questioning how many more young stars were one misstep away from losing autonomy. Legal scholars began pushing for conservatorship reforms, citing Amanda's case as proof that people can heal when given time, dignity, and structured support. Amanda herself remained largely silent publicly, letting her choices speak louder than any publicist-crafted narrative. She was seen attending therapy by choice, not mandate. She applied for a teaching program focused on creative arts. She began reconnecting with estranged friends, not for fame, but for fellowship. Her relationship with her parents, particularly her mother, remained delicate but civil, marked by boundaries, mutual love, and a shared understanding that things would never return to the way they were. And perhaps that was the point. Amanda didn't want to go back. She didn't want a rerun. She wanted a rewrite. And in choosing quiet over spectacle, healing over headlines, she redefined what recovery looks like in a world addicted to drama. For every person who had ever spiraled, stumbled, or lost themselves in a storm of expectation, Amanda's story stood as a lighthouse, flickering, imperfect, but undeniably there. It was a reminder that strength isn't always loud, that some victories don't need applause, that sometimes the most radical act of healing is simply being left alone to grow. In the end, Amanda Bynes didn't need a spotlight to shine. She just needed the space to be. And now, after years of waiting, she finally has it.